Well, welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be in Chapter 7, which deals with work groups and teams. Now, you've probably been a part of a team or a group in the past. Certainly you have. If you've been in a Sunday school class, that would be a group. If you've worked together in a ministry, that's a team. So whether it's business or whether it's ministry or private life, certainly you've been a part of one of these entities or all of these entities. Now, there's certain fundamentals. If you're going to be effective within these groups, teams, and whether it's ministries or professional, you need to understand the concepts of these fundamentals. So let's go ahead and dig in today to Chapter 7. Okay, everybody, welcome back. And today we're going to start in Chapter 7, which talks about groups and teams. This may be a little bit more familiar with you than maybe some of the other concepts because I would imagine by now you would have had some experience working with teams or in groups, whether it's in school or whether it's in ministry or even in the professional world. And we know that working with other people has its advantages, but it also has some challenges as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at Chapter 7, Groups and Teams. Now, what is a group? Well, a group is defined as two or more people who interact with one another such that each person influences and is influenced by each other person. The value of teams is the concept of synergy, which synergy means that the individual efforts of people create a greater result than what the individuals could produce on their own. And the formula that they use for that is 1 + 1 = 3. That means the individual efforts create more of just individual outputs, but it creates a greater whole or result than the individuals who put in the input could do on their own. Now, team defined would be an interdependent group of at least two people who share a common goal and accountability for outcomes. Now, the best way that I can explain it, a group are just two or more people who interact. You could have a group who are in a, let's say, you could have a group in a club, and you may join the club for different interests. It doesn't mean you're trying to achieve a common goal or anything. It just means that you're in a particular grouping of people with a common interest and you interact. And sometimes they can influence you, sometimes they may not. A team is a little bit different. If you take a look at a team, then you can see maybe a football team. Now you have individual people, but they share a common goal and they have accountability for the outcomes. If the quarterback doesn't do what he's supposed to do, the team suffers because of it, or that could go for any member of the team. So a group is just a collection of people who interact, whereas a team, they are interdependent, and the goals and the outcomes are common, and each one shares accountability for the outcome of the overall team. You have categorization of groups, and that's the degree of formalization, and we're going to talk about that. You have formal groups that are established by the organization, and informal groups, which are self-created by members. You have work groups, and that's a formal group established to do work within an organization. You have types of work groups. You have a command group, and that's a relatively permanent group with functional reporting relationships, and it's usually included in the organizational chart. An affinitive group is a permanent collection of employees in the same hierarchical level who meet regularly to share information and solve problems. So a command group might be let's say, for instance, a quality control group. They are there to make sure that quality is maintained in the organization. An affinity group They emphasize information and problem solving. That may be a task force. A functional team is where members come from the same department or functional area. Cross-functional team is where members come from different departments or functional areas. Now, the functional team would be in a traditional organizational structure. You may have HR, you may have research and development, marketing, accounting, finance, and so forth. Each within that organization have independent groupings or departments. That's what you would call maybe a functional team. The HR people would come together to solve HR problems. A cross-functional team is what we're seeing more and more of in today's organizations, where we take people from different areas of the organization, bring them together, and they come to solve problems, they come to innovate, and you get all kinds of value out of that. And as you see here, cross-functional teams can solve problems more quickly because you're not having to go from department to department. You've got them all there, and they can give you the best advice from their departmental perspective on what you need to do as far as problem solving or creativity. You have problem-solving teams which are established to solve a problem and improve work. Again, when you look at continuous improvement, when you take a look at engineering organizations, learning organizations, these are teams and collections of people who are there to enhance the performance of that organization, either through more efficient and effective problem solving or to improve the work of that organization. Self-directed teams, again, these are the results of the new philosophy in organizations today. You have self-directed teams which set and pursue their own goals. The team members are responsible for managerial tasks. They schedule and evaluate the performance of that team. They're more or less their own little communities that thrive on being able to make decisions on their own and support the goals of the organization. And that gives them freedom, autonomy, independence, and that enhances, supposedly, motivation and creativity and responsibility within the organization. Venture teams are kind of really, they're separated from the firm's formal structure, and they can enhance innovation and speed up cycle times. They're semi-autonomous and develop new products, processes, or businesses, such as the newer companies like Google and maybe Microsoft. They have really folks that come in and do their own thing, and they just produce. They are there by objective, and they're not there to punch in a clock or anything, but they pretty much work on their own and can make decisions and also help in the company's cycle time, which means the time it takes to get the idea into the final production. Virtual teams, really they're dispersed all over the globe, and you meet online or using technology. Global teams, places like, or companies like Ford, or maybe I'm trying to think of the Microsoft. These people have worldwide subsidiaries and operations. So it's not practical to fly all over the world to repeat the same thing or to get together. So them getting together electronically using technology is a way that you can leverage virtual teams and global teams. Now, informal groups are not really important, other than, a lot of times your groups at work can form relationships that transfer over to private life. They're relatively permanent and they draw benefits from the social relationships among the members. Interest groups, you have a common activity or interest, such as, let's say, for instance, life groups are popular in church, from what I understand. We still have Sunday school, but a lot of churches today form life groups, and you have the same interest. Hopefully, it's Jesus, but you gather around that common activity or interest. Now, some of the things that affect performance when it comes to group. You have the composition of the group. Is it an informal? Is it a formal? Is it a cross-functional team? Is it homogeneous? Is it heterogeneous? So these are the things that you need to look at as far as composition. Are they from similar backgrounds, or is the group composed of people with different backgrounds? The size of the group is important. Depending on the nature of the group, the size will make or break the group. Norms, these are the accepted behaviors that are going to be expected. Cohesiveness, and that's how close they are and the relationships that they can form. And you also have informal leadership, which means that you really are, each person is given pretty much the same level of authority. Leadership is informal. It's not just a laissez-faire type of structure. You can have a informal leadership where the leader is approachable. The leader doesn't demand, but allows you to create and innovate. You have some groups where there is an established leader and the leader toes the line. But the level of leadership and how engaged they are will be determined by the group and the organizational philosophy. Now, we've talked about this. Composition is the degree of similarities or differences among the groups. Homogeneity means that there are many similarities. Heterogeneity means that there is difference. There is a difference, and there are differences within the group. And they just kind of contrast here. Homogeneous groups are more productive when the task is simple, requires cooperation. If everybody's on the same page because you're of similar backgrounds, then you're going to be more agreeable. Heterogeneous groups are more productive when the task is complex because it's going to demand probably the input of different departments and perspectives to be able to come to grips with the answer for that issue or for that organizational demand. Now, group size, it's the number of people in the group. It does affect resources available to perform the task. It affects the degree of formalization of interactions, communication, and participation. You know, if it's a small group, you probably don't have a lot of formalization because everybody can talk to each other at the same time. If it's a large group, you probably need more structure so that communication can be regimented better and the flow of communication can be more efficient. Now, group size, really several things are going to determine the group size. First of all, the nature of what the group is going to be there for, their ability to interact and influence each other, the maturity of the group. Now, groups go through stages, just like most things. There is a forming stage, a storming stage, norming, performing, and adjourning, and we'll talk about those stages later on. But if the people have reached that level of maturity where they are working together, you probably will be able to have a larger group or a smaller group. But if they're not mature, a large group can really hurt you. the tasks that are involved, how complex are the tasks, are the tasks spelled out, do you know what you're supposed to be doing, do you know the outcome of the group's performance, what it should be. Ability of the group leader to deal with communication, conflict, and task activities. Yeah, I mean, if they're small and the people are mature and getting along and everything's done, then the leader has a fairly easy job. If the roles of the group are ambiguous, if the tasks are ambiguous, if you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, and if you are doing a lot of infighting, which is normally during the storming stage, then you need a very assertive leader who can direct more than just coach. Well, today we looked at and considered some of the fundamentals, some of the basic definitions of groups and teams. We saw the differences and some of the dynamics that are involved with it. Now, as we move in tomorrow and close out this chapter, we're going to see how these entities form, groups and teams, and the challenges that each one faces and brings to the corporation or the organization. We're also going to take a look later on at virtual teams. So this is an important chapter to understand and take in. So you have a good day, and we'll pick it up tomorrow where we left off.